I'm dealing with Rwanda and Congo, who are fighting, and we're trying to get that one straightened out, and I think we have done that. We're going to be doing a garden of American heroes, and now that I think of it, I must tell you, sadly, most of them, I guess all of them, are not with us any longer. I was going to put Tiger in the garden, but maybe you don't want to be there. I maybe should wait a little bit, huh? Like about 50, I think I'm going to wait about 50 years, all right? But Tiger's going to make it, okay? But I'm a little afraid to tell him yes, because he'd be the only one that's living. I don't know, Tiger. Tiger's rejecting that offer, right?
Hey there, Breakdown family. So we are officially 100 days into President Donald Trump's second term. And let me tell you, this isn't just a sequel. This is a reckoning. In just over 3 months, we've witnessed a record-breaking wave of executive orders. Exactly how many? Over 140 to be exact. Signed with the speed and force of a man on a mission. Mass deportation raids tearing through Black and brown immigrant communities with terrifying precision. A coordinated dismantling of DEI initiatives across federal agencies, schools, and public life. A hard pivot back to America first, trade wars, destabilizing entire economies from the Caribbean to Africa. A chilling attack on Black history itself, with funding slashed for HBCUs, cultural museums, and educational programs. And the list goes on and on. Y'all, this isn't just Trump back in power. This is Trump unleashed. Trump 2.0 is faster, it's harsher, more unapologetically authoritarian than ever before. And the question we need to ask ourselves is simple, but urgent. If this is just the beginning, what comes next? President Trump recently sat down with ABC's senior national correspondent, Terry Moran, for a wide-ranging interview, his first major network appearance since returning to power. And in this episode, we're going to break it all down. What he said, what he didn't say, what it all means for our communities at home and abroad, and why we need to be paying attention now more than ever. Now, before we dive in, a big welcome to all our new subscribers and members. We're so thrilled you're here. And if you're watching and haven't joined us yet, consider this your invitation. We would love for you to be a part of our growing family here at Pan-Genius TV, where we bring you global Black stories told with truth, with care, with intention, and where we mobilize from talk to real action, to real power. So just hit subscribe, tap that bell, and click join to be a part of something bigger. I look forward to connecting with you there. All right, now let's break it down. So before we get into the interview, let's take a moment to recap what's unfolded in just the first 100 days of Trump's second term. Because if you've been paying attention, you notice something deeply unsettling. The impact of Trump 2.0 isn't just being felt here in Black America. It's rippling across the entire Black world. Let's start with what's happening at home. While the headlines focus on Trump's border crackdowns and late-night rants on Truth Social, something more deliberate, more dangerous is happening just beneath the surface. And make no mistake, this is a war on Black progress. In 100 days, Trump has launched a calculated effort to unravel the gains Black communities have fought for since the civil rights era, starting with education, culture, and economic power. He slashed federal funding to HBCUs, including a proposed cut of $64 million to Howard University, although he said he wouldn't.
Mr. President, as a graduate of Winston-Salem State University, which is an HBCU, I'm fully aware of the contributions that you've made to HBCUs in the past.
Thank you.
There is a concern, however, that with all the things going on in this day and time, that there will be a cut in federal contributions to HBCUs. Should HBCUs be very concerned about you making cuts in that regard?
Not at all. And let me just tell you, I'm glad you brought it. Historically Black colleges and universities, I saved them, Stephen, They were going out of business. They came to me, about 50 people that headed up, and they came to me the first year, and I took care of them. I took care of the black colleges and historically black HBCU. I took care of them. You know that better than anybody. Then they came to me the second year, and I said, wait a minute. Why do you keep coming back? I saw you guys, and they were great guys. Some of them, to this day, are still really friendly. And by the way, they love Trump, every one of them. They came to me the second time.
Well, you're giving them money.
They came to me the second time. They came to me the second time, and I was surprised to see him.
I got it, Mr. President.
Yeah, just to finish it. They came to me the third, and I said, fellas, you need long-term. I got the historically black colleges and universities. I got them more money than they ever dreamt possible. And they're in great shape now, and they have long-term financing. Nobody did that but Donald Trump.
Okay.
Now, barely 2 days after that interview, his administration's budget was released, showing that the president is proposing a cut of $64 million in funding to Howard University. Now, his administration claims the cut is tied to the completion of a hospital project. But let's be real, it's part of a broader pattern of disinvestment. He's reignited calls to defund the National Museum of African American History and Culture, accusing it of dividing the country and calling for the removal of exhibits on slavery, police violence, and systemic racism. Across federal agencies, his administration is quietly scrubbing references to racial injustice, deleting language, revising grants programs, and erasing archives that document Black history. And he's proposed legislation that would bar any school receiving federal funds from teaching about systemic racism or white privilege, not just critical race theory, any acknowledgement that racism exists beyond the individual level. In other words, Trump isn't just attacking our rights. He's coming for our memory, for our history. Because if you can erase the truth, then you can rewrite the story. You can convince the next generation that Black freedom was a glitch in the system, not the result of generations of resistance. This is cultural warfare. It's an attempt to make Black achievement look like a fluke, Black resistance look like a threat, and Black leadership look like a problem that needs solving. All of this while claiming on record that he's doing more for Black Americans than any president in history. And at a recent Black History Month event just back in February, saying that he is going to build a beautiful new statue park where he will honor African American icons.
Under the executive order I signed last month, this new beautiful outdoor statue park, it's going to be a statue park. It's going to be unbelievable. We're picking the final sites now. It's between various states that want it very badly. We'll honor hundreds of our greatest Americans to ever live, including countless Black Americans, icons. The garden will predominantly feature incredible women like Harriet Tubman, Rosa Parks, Billie Holiday, Aretha Franklin, and Coretta Scott King. And I will showcase extraordinary. It will be something very extraordinary. It's going to be producing, we're going to produce some of the most beautiful works of art in the form of a statue from men like Frederick Douglass, Booker T. Washington, Jackie Robinson, what a great athlete that was, Martin Luther King Jr.
I mean, the gaslighting is almost impressive. But the danger isn't just here. Let's turn our attention to Africa and the Caribbean, because Trump's second term is sending shockwaves across the diaspora too. First, the tariffs. Trump's trade war with China may be aimed at Beijing, but guess who's caught in the crossfire? Small island nations in the Caribbean and African countries that depend on trade with China. As U.S.-China tensions escalate, many of these economies are being squeezed hard. Inflation is climbing, imports are slowing, debt is deepening.
I say simply to President Trump, Our economies are not doing your economy any harm in any way. They are too small to have any negative or distorting impact on your country. So I ask you to consider your decades-long friendship between your country and ours, and look to the Caribbean, recognizing that the family ties, yes, are strong. Let us talk, I hope, and let us work together to keep prices down for all of our people.
We are not going to die. We will have to diversify and go to other markets. We have Africa CFTA as a market, South Africa also as a market under the SACU regime. We just have to diversify and go to other markets.
Then the DRC mineral deal. In a closed-door meeting, Trump struck a high-stakes minerals agreement with the Democratic Republic of Congo, home to some of the world's most valuable mineral reserves, estimated to be worth over $20 trillion. Now, to be fair, he wasn't the one that initiated the offer. Okay, it came from DRC's president, Felix Tshisekedi, who desperately cried out to President Trump for military support in fighting off dangerous rebels who have taken control of parts of the region. He offered access to their minerals in exchange. Now, details of the agreement are not public yet. But you want to take a wild guess why Trump sent his team on the next flight to Kinshasa to strike a deal? I'll give you a hint. It's not exactly because he cares about peace or the Congolese people. And then the foreign aid cuts. One of the first things Trump did was dismantle USAID, slashing aid to key health and development programs across the continent overnight. That means fewer resources for maternal health in Ghana, less youth support in Kenya, and less funding for climate resilience in Barbados and Dominica.
Somebody's asking about the outside world and foreign aid. And I've heard the president of the country you are studying in slashing aid. You see, one of the questions we have now, he hasn't asked himself. How much leaves our continent to his country? He hasn't asked himself that. They think it's just charity. It is not. At the right time, we'll also take action. And it will not be funny.
So when we talk about what's at stake in this presidency, we can't limit the lens to just Detroit or Atlanta. Because from Brooklyn to Bridgetown, Baltimore to Bamako, our people are feeling the impact. Trump's agenda is reshaping the future of Black life, not just in the US, but everywhere we call home. And that's why we have to stay awake, because what's happening right now is bigger than one man, bigger than one country. It's a global warning. All right, so now let's get into the interview. They start off with a quick tour of his Oval Office.
Hello, everybody. How are you? This is the Oval Office. This is the Resolute desk, which is really something very spectacular. There's nothing quite like it. And they give you a choice of about 7 different desks, but this is the one I chose. Ronald Reagan had it, FDR had it, a few people had it, but I found it to be the most beautiful.
It is amazing.
This is an amazing space, and amazing maybe architecturally wonderful, but amazing for what it represents. It represents the U.S., and if properly used, a lot of good things can happen.
I see Ronald Reagan over there.
Yeah, Ronald Reagan.
Right to your left.
Being in the Oval Office is very important. See Ronald Reagan here, and put him a little bit larger. It sort of seemed to fit very nicely. You have Democrats a little bit. You have
Franklin Roosevelt.
Franklin Roosevelt. So you look at that picture and people say, well, what's he doing up there? But look, he was a serious president, whether we like it or not. He was a 4-termer and went through a war. You have Lincoln, you have Washington, but you look over here, that's Monroe, the Monroe Doctrine.
Why is he up there?
I think the Monroe Doctrine was pretty important. That was his claim to fame. Over here you have the original of Abraham Lincoln and George Washington, and of course you have the Declaration of Independence.
What does it mean to you?
Well, it means exactly what it says. It's a declaration. It's a declaration of unity and love and respect, and it means a lot. And it's something very special to our country.
Lincoln's portrait up there. I'm not familiar with that one, but I think when I'm looking at that famous line in the second inaugural, with malice toward none, with charity toward all.
Well, he was a great president. He went through a lot.
And the Oval Office is always changing between presidents. And
It changes,
that says
yeah,
something.
it does.
What does this say about how you feel about the country and the office?
Well, I think it says I love the country. I mean, I'm putting pictures of presidents up that have never been up, pictures that weren't largely used, and in many cases, great men, in this case men, but great men of great achievement.
And your every detail, it seems.
Yeah.
This is your office.
I'm a very detailed person. I'm a very clean person. I like cleanliness. I like to see this space be treated properly. I've added a lot to the space in terms of beautification, in terms of modernization. That's
a gallery of presidents.
It really is. It really is. So, and it's an honor to have you people with us.
So let's talk about this little tour Trump just gave of the Oval Office. Because at first glance, it might seem like he's just pointing out portraits, right? Reagan here, FDR there, Monroe, because the Monroe Doctrine was important. Lincoln, Washington, a little dash of unity, love, and respect, according to him. But if you pay close attention, something deeper is happening here. This isn't just a gallery of American presidents. It's a gallery of Trump's America, an attempt to visually rewrite who he thinks should be remembered and who shouldn't. And what's most telling? Barack Obama is nowhere to be seen. That spot where the outgoing president's photo usually hangs, Trump replaced it with a framed image of himself being rushed off stage during an assassination attempt. Let that sink in. Instead of honoring the historic first Black president who handed him the office, he inserts an image of his own victimhood. Now, this isn't just petty, it's symbolic. Because what we're seeing isn't just a rearrangement of decor. It's an erasure of Black achievement from the literal walls of power. And it fits a broader pattern that we're seeing, right? This is the same man who has defunded the Smithsonian's African American History Museum, pushed to remove references to race and slavery from U.S. schools' curriculum, proposed cuts to HBCUs like Howard University, and now claims that a photo of Lincoln and some cherry-picked portraits represent unity and love. Let's be clear. This isn't unity. It's selective memory designed to glorify certain histories and erase others. Because when Trump says he wants to beautify the space, make it clean, and fill it with great men, the question becomes, whose greatness is he recognizing and whose presence is being erased? And in a moment where Black communities are still fighting for truth, fighting for visibility and inclusion, not just in textbooks, but in national memory, this silent revisionism matters. This is why history can't just be what's written in books, right? It's also what's hung on walls.
Mr. President, thank you for doing this.
Thank you very much.
Here in the Oval Office, it's special. 100 days into your second term. So what's the one thing, just one thing, that you think is the most significant thing you've done so far in these 100 days?
Well, I think maybe the border is the most significant because our country was really going bad. They were allowing people to come in from prisons, as you know, and you've heard me say it, but you've heard a lot of people say it. Prisons, mental institutions, gang members, murderers. We had many murders, 11,888, they think. Some murdered more than one person. So you had murderers coming in, you had everybody coming in, and not just South America, from all over the world. They were emptying their prisons into our country. And now it's totally closed down. And you've seen just yesterday, they announced 99.9%. Nobody thought that could happen. And it happened quickly, very quickly. And I think that's very significant. But we're doing other things that are very significant. results will take a little bit longer because it's one of those, it's complicated. It's many years of trading abuse. We've been abused by other countries for years and years. They laughed at us. They thought we were stupid people, and we're fixing it. And I think that's going to be very, very important. But
We have a lot of ground to cover.
Yeah, I would really say that the border is so important. Just
And
can't
we'll get there.
let that
Immigration,
happen.
huge.
Yeah.
So when asked what he considers his biggest achievement in the first 100 days of his second term, Trump doesn't mention the economy, not education, not foreign relations. He points to one thing, the border. And what does he say? That he's closed it, that other countries were emptying their prisons into our country, that 11,888 murderers, yes, he gave an oddly specific number, came in, and now it's 99.9% shut down. Let's pause right there. There's zero credible evidence to support that number, and no proof of so-called mass prison dumps from foreign countries. In fact, reports show that many of the migrants deported to countries like El Salvador under accusations of gang activity actually have no criminal record at all. So why does he keep pushing this narrative? Why is border control the crown jewel of his first 100 days and not something that's top of mind for the American people, like the economy, the price of eggs? Because the point isn't policy, right? It's fear. This is classic Trump. Inflate the threat, criminalize immigrants, especially black and brown ones, and position yourself as the tough guy who fixed it. And let's be clear, he's not talking to America. He's talking to his base. And for black communities, that's exactly where this becomes dangerous. Because this kind of fear-based rhetoric has always paved the way for something bigger. Heavier policing, expanded surveillance, deportation raids, which is already happening, and militarized crackdowns in inner cities. But here's what's most revealing. Trump doesn't present this as immigration reform, no. He frames it as some sort of a battle for civilization itself. And it's not just about the southern border. He says people are coming in from all over the world. Translation, anywhere that doesn't look like his version of America. So we have to ask ourselves, if this is what he calls a victory, who's next on the chopping block? Because when fear drives policy, freedom becomes conditional and rights get negotiated behind closed borders.
I want to start with the economy, the number one issue for so many people, for just about everybody. It's one of the main reasons that you're back in this office. And now we have this trade war with China that Moody's and other analysts say is going to cost American families thousands of more dollars per year. And there is a lot of concern out there. People are worried, even some people who voted for you saying, I didn't sign up for this. So how do you answer those concerns?
Well, they did sign up for it, actually, and this is what I campaigned on. I said that we've been abused by other countries at levels that nobody's ever seen before. We were losing $3 to $5 billion a day on trade. We were losing $1.5 trillion to $2 trillion a year, not sustainable. They were taking advantage of us like they've never. I could have left it that way, and at some point there would have been an implosion like nobody's ever seen. But I said, no, we have to fix it. I've wanted to do this for many years. You know, I had the best economy during my first term. We had a tremendous economy, tremendous success. And we did tremendous numbers of tariffs on, we took in a lot of money from tariffs, China in particular, hundreds of billions of dollars in tariffs. We had no inflation, as you know. We had an incredible economy. We're given credit for a great economy. But I said, we have to fix this, otherwise it's just not self-sustaining.
Well, one of the things you ran on was you'd said you'd bring prices down on day one, and that it would happen fast, and that it would happen fast.
I have.
Most economists will tell you that tariffs will raise prices. So don't your tariffs cut against that promise you made to bring prices down?
No, because I had massive tariffs on China, if you remember, in my first term, and we had essentially no inflation, like around 1% inflation, which is like a perfect number. And then when Biden took over, it went through the roof. It went to probably the worst inflation we've ever had. I mean, we had an inflation nightmare. Now, if you look at what's happening now, we're only there for 100 days, as you say. And in 100 days, we took over. We had bad inflation for 4 years, for 2 years especially 2 years of his administration. I would say record-setting like we've never seen. They say 48 years, the worst in 48 years. I say it was much worse than that.
Yeah.
Right. So now if you look at what's happened, energy is down. Gasoline hit $1.98 in a few states during the last couple of days. It was $3.50 and $4 and $4.50. But gasoline is way down. When I took over, you remember the big thing with eggs. They hit me the first week. Eggs, like it was my fault. I said, I didn't cause this problem. This problem was caused by Biden. What's the problem with eggs? And they said, they've doubled. And well, eggs are down 87% since I got involved.
A lot of that is
and
bird
by the way,
flu,
and there were
right?
Plenty of eggs for Easter, which we just went through. There were plenty of eggs for Easter. They were saying you won't have enough eggs for Easter. My secretary did a fantastic job on eggs. Groceries are down. Everything's down.
Okay.
Interest rates are the same. Interest rates should be down, but we have a Federal Reserve that wants to be stubborn. They want to be cute.
Everything is down, Mr. President? I don't know what your people are telling you, but did you forget to take a quick trip to the supermarket to verify for yourself? That would have been nice. So let's break this down, because there's a lot packed in here. Trump is now framing his trade war with China as his proudest economic achievement, arguing that it's the one thing that's going to fix the American economy and save the middle class. He claims we were losing $3 to $5 billion a day in trade, and I fixed it. He even suggests that his tariffs helped bring inflation down, pointing to falling prices on items like gas and eggs. But let's separate the sound bites from the facts, y'all. First, tariffs are taxes, yes, and historically, they get passed on to consumers, not China. In Trump's first term, U.S. businesses and households paid more than $80 billion in tariff-related costs, especially in agriculture and manufacturing communities, many of them Black and brown. Second, he proposed to bring prices down on day one. Remember that campaign soundbite? But most economists agree that trade wars don't bring prices down. They distort supply chains and increase costs, especially for working class people. And yet somehow, Trump is selling this trade war like it's a stimulus package. We made hundreds of billions off China, he says. But where is the proof that it trickled down? Because while the billionaire class got tax cuts and Wall Street surged, guess what? Black families, they saw stagnant wages, rising housing costs, and little change in generational wealth gaps. Third, Trump boasts about lowering gas prices and grocery costs, but leaves out the temporary nature of those dips, right? The global factors influencing inflation, like supply chain recovery post-COVID, and the fact that food insecurity is still rising in many Black and rural communities. And let's not even get started on that bizarre line. My secretary did a fantastic job on eggs. You know what the bigger issue here is? Economic gaslighting. Because here's what's really happening. He's setting up a narrative where any short-term price dip becomes proof of his genius, right? I fixed it. While any long-term pain gets blamed on someone else. It was Biden's fault. But let's talk about why this matters for Black America and the global Black world. Because when Trump pushes aggressive tariffs on China and isolates the U.S. from global trade, African economies feel the ripple effects through blocked exports and tighter global capital. Caribbean nations already reliant on U.S. imports face higher prices with fewer options. And Black Americans, already economically vulnerable, feel the pinch first and worst. Let's keep going.
You said something a couple of weeks ago that struck me. You said concerning the tariffs, which economists say are going to raise prices, you said, quote, hang tough. Yeah. It won't be easy. You said that to the American people. Is that what Americans should expect, some hard times?
I've said that during my campaign. Look, we won a campaign by a lot. We won all 7 swing states. We won the popular vote by a lot. You know, we had a tremendous campaign. I said all of these things during my campaign. I said, you're going to have a transition period. We've been ripped off by every country all over the world. They're laughing at us. They thought we were stupid people, and we were. And I said, that's not going to happen. We're not going to let that happen.
Hard times are ahead?
I don't think so. I think great times are ahead. Look, since I came in, gasoline is down, groceries are down, egg prices are down, many things are down, just about everything. You know, you don't have the drop in fuel and energy and oil like we did. I took it from maybe $3.20, maybe more than that, down into a much lower number. When you have that kind of a drop, you're not going to have inflation.
Not now, but it's the tariffs, right? We still have 145% tariffs on China. Your Treasury Secretary said we basically have an embargo on China.
Look, you're trying to say something's going to happen, Terry.
No, okay, well,
nothing's going to happen.
You know business.
Terry,
I want to ask you.
I do know business.
Yes, so 145% tariffs on China, and that is
That's good.
basically
That's
an
good.
embargo.
They deserve it.
It'll raise prices on everything from electronics to clothing to building houses.
You don't know that. You don't know whether or not China's going to eat it.
That's mathematics.
China probably will eat those tariffs, but at 145, they basically can't do much business with the United States. And they were making from us $1 trillion a year. They were ripping us off like nobody's ever ripped us off. And by the way, we have other countries that were just as bad. If you look at the European Union, it was terrible what they've done to us. Every country, almost every country in the world was ripping us off. They're not doing that anymore.
I want you to think about the boom that this country has had in small businesses, mom and pop Etsy stores, small businesses that became big businesses.
They haven't had a boom because of inflation.
Well,
the boom was inflationary boom. The people were wiped out with inflation. I mean, you read the news, you do the business stuff, I assume.
Now, a lot of them built those businesses on the trading model.
Yeah, and they're going to make more money
They
now.
sourced their products overseas, and now they're looking at an extinction event.
I've been here.
It's a disaster for them.
I've been here for 3 months. I've taken a trade deficit down to a number that's very, very starting to get really good. I just got here. We had a country that it was not sustainable, what Biden did to this country, between the open borders where criminals poured into our country, between every country in the world ripping us off on trade. It was not sustainable.
So your message to those small businesses who are saying, we can't live a month, 2 months with these tariffs. Apple got a big deal. Is there something for them?
No, not only Apple. We've got $7 to $8 trillion being invested in our country in 2 months. Biden didn't have that over a year. I mean, if you look at Biden, nobody was really investing in this country. Everybody was ripping off our country. Apple's putting up $500 billion, but that's only one of many companies. Companies are flooding into our country right now.
So your answer to the concern about the tariffs is everything's going to be hunky-dory?
Everything's going to be just fine. It wouldn't have been if I didn't do this. I had a choice. I could leave it, have a nice, easy time, but I think ultimately you would have had an implosion. Our country had inflation that was worse than they've ever had it before. You don't mention that. Why don't you mention that? We had the worst inflation probably in the history of our country. People say 48 years. Probably in the history of our country, we had the worst inflation. And people were dying over the inflation. You know that. Now the grocery prices are coming down. The energy prices are coming down. Gasoline's coming down. It's all heading in the right direction.
So let's talk about Trump's advice to the American people, okay? He says, hang tight. It won't be easy. He's basically telling working families, many of whom are already living paycheck to paycheck, to brace for pain. Why? Because of a trade war he chose to escalate. He says, China deserves it. They were ripping us off. Other countries were laughing at us. It's a familiar narrative. Blame the outsider to justify extreme policy. But let's ask the real question here. Who is going to feel that pain the most? Because it's not billionaires like Trump or Apple. It's not the multinationals with deep pockets and global supply chains. It's the single mother who runs a beauty supply store, immigrant family importing handmade goods from Africa or the Caribbean, that young Black entrepreneur sourcing materials for their Etsy shop. And when prices go up on clothing, shipping, raw materials, their entire business model collapses. This is especially alarming because Trump admits small businesses will suffer. Yes, but then he brushes it off like they'll be fine. They'll make more money. Based on what, President Trump? Because right now, nearly 50% of Black-owned businesses don't survive beyond 5 years. Many are already locked out of capital, paying more for credit and relying on affordable imports to compete. And Trump's 145% tariff on China, that's not just a penalty on Beijing, it's a penalty on every small-scale importer, including thousands of diaspora entrepreneurs trying to build generational wealth. Now, here's where it gets even more disconnected. While small businesses are being told to hang tough, Trump brags about Apple getting a $500 billion deal. That's the America he's building. Bailouts and incentives for the powerful, pain and sacrifice for the rest. But let me tell you why this matters beyond the US. Because this isn't just a domestic policy, right? It's a global message to Africa, the Caribbean, the Black world. We don't want your goods. We don't want your people, but we want your praise. This trade war and the arrogance behind it is not just economic. It's ideological. It says we will isolate ourselves no matter the cost to others. But here's the twist. In trying to isolate China, Trump is actually forcing the global South to turn to China even more for loans, trade, infrastructure, and investment. So while he's shouting America first, he may just be pushing Africa and the Caribbean closer to Beijing. And the saddest part of all of this, while Trump celebrates cracking down on imports and raising tariffs, Black business owners are being left behind. They're not at the table. They're not in the deals. And they're being told again to sacrifice in the name of patriotism. So the next time someone says the economy is bouncing back, ask them, for who? Because as it stands, Main Street is being crushed so Wall Street can stay winning. And here comes the part that should make all of us sit up and pay attention.
As you said, it is an undeniable fact that illegal crossings at the southern border have plummeted, a staggering decline. But there are questions about your methods. And so I want to ask
About my message?
Methods, about your methods, how you're accomplishing
They seem to
this.
work.
Do you acknowledge that under our law, every single person who gets deported gets a hearing first to make their case?
Well, are we talking about people that are citizens of our country or not?
No, you're not deporting citizens at this point.
Well, let me ask you, did they get hearings when Biden allowed 21 million, because I think the number is 20 million people to flow into our country? You had 21 million people that came into our country through a stupid open border, and they were prisoners, and they were people that you don't want in many cases in our country, right? They came from all over the world. They came from the Congo. They came from South. They came from all over the world. We're talking about some of the roughest countries in the world they had here, including terrorists, by the way. Now,
but
did we give them a hearing when they came in?
Well, the law requires that every single person who is going to be deported gets a hearing first.
Well,
do you acknowledge that?
I'll have to ask the lawyers about that. All I can say is this. If you're going to have 21 million people, and if we have to get a lot of them out because they're criminals,
We're going to have to act fast. We can't. Do you think we can give 21 million trials? Let's say each trial takes 2 weeks. Is that what you want us to do?
The law
give
is the
21
law,
million?
sir. The law is the law, and you're
the law
sworn
doesn't
to
say anything
uphold it.
about trials.
No, not trials, hearings. I said
These
hearings.
people came in, they're not citizens. They came in illegally. They came into our country illegally.
And
We have to get them out.
There's a legal process for that.
I can't, sure, and we follow the legal process. I can't have a trial, a major
I'm
trial
not
for
saying
every
major.
person that came in illegally. We have thousands of murderers that came in. They're going to murder people. They already have murdered people in our country.
Right, so
we have to get them out,
They're
and we have to
bad
get them
guys,
out fast.
Really bad guys. But in our country, even bad guys get due process, right?
If people come into our country illegally, there's a different standard. These are illegal. They came in illegally.
But they get due process.
Well, they get a process where we have to get them out. Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about the Venezuelans.
They get whatever my lawyers say.
Right. All right, let's talk about the Venezuelans. You deported more than 200 Venezuelans to that prison in El Salvador. You say they're violent, they're gang members, they're terrorists. Many of them don't have a criminal
They are,
record
by the way.
at all.
Well,
but I want to.
I'm not so sure about that if you take a look.
I want to
When
read you something.
Excuse me. When you look at those people, they were violent people. They were violent people.
But many of them don't have a criminal record
Go
at this
ahead.
point.
I don't know.
want
That's
to
what
read
you
something.
say.
Well, it's based
Go
on
ahead.
their lawyer, what their lawyers
Go
have
ahead.
said. Okay.
Go ahead.
Joe Rogan said this. Joe Rogan, one of the leading podcasters, Trump supporter, about the deportation of Venezuelans. He said, quote, rounding up gang members and shipping them to El Salvador with no due process, he said it was dangerous, and added, quote, we got to be careful that we don't become monsters while we're fighting monsters. Is Joe Rogan right?
Oh, I agree with that 100%. Yeah, we want to be careful, and we are careful. We're doing something that has to be done. We have a country that's very sick. Joe Biden, and it's not him because I don't even think he knew what the hell was happening, but the people around him are vicious people, and what they've done to the country is unbelievable. They've allowed 21 million people to pour into our country. Many of these people are criminals. They've allowed you mentioned Venezuela, the jails of Venezuela to be emptied into the United States. Do you know Venezuela crime is way down? Way, way down. You know why? Because their criminals are now living happily in the United States of America, and we're getting them out. And I was elected to get them out, and we're getting them out.
Under the law.
And we're getting them out fast, and we're getting them out legally. Now, in some cases, we have judges. In some cases, they're radical left judges. What happened the other day where a judge was protecting a criminal was horrible. And I think she's got big problems, frankly. And there are a couple of them like that.
I want to talk about one
Wait a
man.
minute.
Yep.
We have to be treated fairly by judges. And we're not being treated fairly by all judges.
Oh, that's a subject. So you're saying that you don't like some of the rulings, some of the court orders?
I think the rulings will be overturned, yeah.
All right. Well, let me ask you about one man and one court order. Kilmar Abrego Garcia. He's the Salvadoran man who crossed into this country illegally, but who is under a protective order that he not be sent back to El Salvador. Your government sent him back to El Salvador and acknowledged in court that was a mistake. And now the Supreme Court has upheld an order that you must return him facilitate his return to the United States. What are you doing to comply?
Well, the lawyer that said it was a mistake was here a long time, was not appointed by us, should not have said that, And just so you understand, the person that you're talking about, you're making this person sound, this is a MS-13 gang member, a tough cookie, been in lots of skirmishes, beat the hell out of his wife, and the wife was petrified to even talk about him, okay? This is not an innocent, wonderful gentleman from Maryland.
I'm not saying he's a good guy. It's about the rule of law. The order from the Supreme Court stands, sir.
He came into our country illegally.
You could get him back. There's a phone on this desk.
I could.
You could pick it up, and with all the power of the presidency, you could call up the president of El Salvador and say, send him back right now.
And if he were the gentleman that you say he is, I would do that.
But the court has
he's
ordered
not.
you to facilitate that.
I'm not the one making this decision. We have lawyers that don't want to do this.
But the buck stops in this office.
No. I follow the law. You want me to follow the law? If I were the president that just wanted to do anything, I'd probably keep him right where he is.
Supreme Court says what the law is.
Listen, I was elected to take care of a problem it was a unforced error that was made by a very incompetent man, a man that turned out to be incompetent, that you always said was wonderful, a great genius, right? And now you find out, all of the media now, they're saying what a mistake they made. A man who was grossly incompetent allowed us to have open borders where millions of people flowed in. I campaigned on that issue. I wouldn't say it was my number one issue, but it was pretty close.
Right up there.
I campaigned on that issue. I've done an amazing job. I have closed borders. He said you couldn't do it. You wouldn't be able to do it. It would never happen. Well, it happened, and it happened very quickly. Wait a minute. When we have criminals, murderers, criminals in this country, we have to get them out, and we're doing it.
By law.
And you'll pick out one man, but even the man that you picked out, he said he wasn't a member of a gang. And then they looked, and on his knuckles, he had MS-13.
There's a dispute
Well,
over
wait a minute. He had MS-13 on his knuckles tattooed.
Oh, he had some tattoos that are interpreted that way. But let's move on.
Wait a minute. Hey, Terry.
He did not
Don't
have the
do that.
letter MS-13.
It says MS-13.
That was Photoshop. So let me
That was Photoshop. Terry, you can't do that. Hey, they're giving you the big break of a lifetime. You know, you're doing the interview. I picked you because, frankly, I never heard of you, but that's okay. But I picked you, Terry, but you're not being very nice. He had MS-13 tattooed.
We'll agree to disagree. I want to move on to something else.
Terry, do you want me to show you the picture?
I saw the picture. We'll
and you think it
agree
was
to disagree.
Photoshopped? Well,
Here we go.
Don't Photoshop it. Go look at his hand. He
Fair
had
enough.
MS-13.
He did have tattoos that can be interpreted that way. I'm not an expert on them. I want to turn to Ukraine,
No,
sir.
Terry,
I want to get to
Terry,
Ukraine.
No. He had MS, as clear as you can be, not interpreted. This is why people no longer believe the news, because
when
it's
he was
fake
photographed
news.
in El Salvador, they aren't there. But let's just go on. They aren't there when he's in El Salvador.
They weren't there, but they're there now, right?
No,
but they're there
in
now.
your picture.
Terry,
Ukraine, sir.
he's got MS-13 on his knuckles.
All right.
Okay?
All right. We'll take a look at that.
You do
We'll take
such
a
a
look.
disservice.
We'll take a look at
Why
that,
don't you
sir.
just say, yes, he does, and, go on to something else?
It's contested.
So Trump is being pressed on immigration and his mass deportation strategy. And his answer? We can't give 21 million people a hearing. That's not realistic. Now let that sink in. This is the former and now current president of the United States publicly dismissing the idea that due process should apply to everyone, even though the law says it does. He admits he doesn't even know what the law is. I'll have to ask my lawyers. But he's still justifying the fast tracking of deportations based not on facts, but on fear. Let's get into it. He throws out numbers: 21 million immigrants, thousands of murderers, prison dumps from the Congo and Venezuela. But here's the truth. There's zero verified evidence that Venezuela or any other country is intentionally sending criminals to the U.S. A huge number of those deported have no criminal records. And under U.S. law, even undocumented immigrants are guaranteed the right to a hearing before they are deported. But Trump doesn't care about that, because this isn't about facts, is it? It's about framing. And the frame is clear. Immigrants are criminals. Due process is optional. If you don't look American, your rights are negotiable. And this has real consequences for us. Why? Because once due process is seen as optional for one group, it's only a matter of time before it becomes optional for you. Just ask the African immigrants already being racially profiled at airports, or Black asylum seekers in ICE detention who face longer waits and harsher conditions than others, or Caribbean nationals who've been quietly deported for minor offenses without media coverage. What Trump is laying out here is not just a border policy, it's a playbook. And let's not ignore the symbolic shift he made in the Oval Office. He removed the photo of Barack Obama, and in its place, a framed image of his own assassination attempt. That says it all. He's not positioning himself as a leader. He's positioning himself as a victim warrior, someone who's under attack, and therefore justified in using extraordinary measures to defend the country. And the people who get caught in the crosshairs, immigrants, refugees, Black and brown communities, anyone who dares to question the narrative. This moment isn't just about Trump. It's about whether the rule of law will hold, or whether fear, power, and propaganda will overrule it. Because once you remove due process from one group of people, no one's rights are safe. And now, here comes the peace broker segment.
I was just in Rome, and to that moving photograph of you and President Zelensky sitting in St. Peter's Basilica talking peace. It went around the world.
Sure.
Take us into that moment.
Well, look, the Ukraine is a very serious, very tough situation. And this is Biden's war. This is not my war, but I want to see if I can solve it, because probably close to 5,000 young soldiers a week are being killed, Russian and Ukrainian. We also spend a tremendous amount of money in Ukraine, and Europe should be spending much more than us. They're not. They're spending much less. It's been badly handled by the Biden administration. It's been badly handled all the way around, the way around.
That moment.
The moment was a moment of solace, in a sense, because tremendous numbers of people are dying. A lot of his people are dying. They're being killed. And I feel very badly about it. That's a war that would have never happened if I were president. And it didn't happen for 4 years. It was never even a thought of it happening.
It does feel like something's happening after that meeting with Zelensky in St. Peter's. You posted this on social media. There was no reason for Putin to be shooting missiles into civilian areas and cities and towns over the last few days. It makes me think that maybe...
Well, that was part of my post, but you're right. That was a part of a post.
And it says, it makes me think that maybe he doesn't want to stop the war. He's just tapping me along.
Yeah, that's possible. Sure. He could be tapping me along a little bit. I would say that he would like to stop the war. I think that if it weren't for me, I think he'd want to take over the whole country, personally. I always felt. So when I left, there wasn't even a chance that this would happen. When Biden got involved, I won't say whether or not he handled it properly, but obviously it wasn't good because the war started. Putin went in, the war started. I believe that Putin wanted to get all of Ukraine once he went in. And I think part of the reason he went in, he saw what happened in Afghanistan, how incompetently Milley and all these guys handled that. It was one of the greatest embarrassments of our lifetimes, but maybe in the history of our country. Okay, so Putin went in. I think Putin wanted all of Ukraine.
Right.
I think if I didn't win the election, he would have gotten all of Ukraine. I think he would have taken all of Ukraine. I think his first choice, never with me, he would have never gone in. With this group of losers, he went in, he saw what happened in Afghanistan. He said, wow, this is my chance. Because it was always the apple of his eye. I talked to him. Ukraine was the apple of his eye. I think he wanted the whole country.
You've said for months.
And because of me, I do believe that he's willing to stop the fighting. Don't forget.
You think he wants peace? You think Vladimir Putin wants peace?
I think he does, yes. I think
Still.
he does. I think because
even with the raining missiles
I think he really, his dream was to take over the whole country. I think because of me, he's not going to do that.
Do you trust him? Do you trust him?
I don't trust you. I don't trust a lot of people. I don't trust you. Look at you. You come in all shooting for bear. You're so happy to do the interview.
I am
And
happy.
then you start hitting me with fake questions. You start telling me that a guy whose hand is covered with a tattoo doesn't have the tattoo. You know.
All right.
I mean, you're being dishonest.
No, I'm not.
Let me
No,
just
I am
tell
not,
you,
sir.
do I trust? I don't trust a lot of people. But I do think this. I think that let's say he respects me. And I believe because of me, he's not going to take over the whole. But his decision, his choice would be to take over all of Ukraine.
Okay.
It's a war that never should have happened. It did happen because of incompetent people.
Last question on this.
But it never should have happened.
If there's no peace deal, will the U.S. cut off military aid to Ukraine?
I don't want to tell you that. I'm not going to tell you whether or not I would or not. I want to leave that as a big fat secret because I don't want to ruin a negotiation. But
I'd be worried
I
if
will
I
tell
were
you, I
Ukrainian.
was not happy when I saw Putin shooting missiles into a few towns and cities. And that was not something that I like seeing. And I thought it was inappropriate. but I think the whole war is inappropriate.
Okay.
Again, it's a war that shouldn't have happened. This is a war that if the election weren't rigged, and it was totally rigged, the 2020 election, if it weren't rigged, you wouldn't have that. You wouldn't have had the embarrassment of Afghanistan. You wouldn't have October 7th with Israel. You wouldn't have had any of the problems that you have right now.
I want to ask one
and
question.
you wouldn't have had inflation either.
This is Biden's war. It wouldn't have happened if I were president. Sound familiar? He's rewriting the script, casting himself as the hero who prevented a war, and now the only one who can end it. Let's be clear. Putin invaded Ukraine in February 2022, and there is no credible evidence that Trump ever had a binding agreement with Russia that stopped that invasion. But Trump frames it differently. Ukraine was the apple of his eye, he says, but because of me, Putin won't take the whole country. What? He calls the war a tragedy, but he also shrugs off the missile attacks on civilians like it's just a signal. Maybe Putin's just tapping me along. Now that's a dangerous mindset, because what he's really saying is this: authoritarian aggression is fine, just don't do it while I'm watching. Which brings us to the real red flag. When asked if he would cut military aid to Ukraine, listen to what he says. He says, I'm going to leave that as a big fat secret. Think about that for a second. That's leverage politics with human lives on the line. And here's why it matters. Because Trump isn't just thinking about Ukraine, no. He's laying the groundwork for how he'll deal with any conflict that doesn't directly serve U.S. interests. And in that worldview, Africa becomes a bargaining chip, right? Not a priority. Will he support peacekeeping in Sudan or Congo without his own interests? Will he stand by ECOWAS if another coup erupts? Will he strengthen ties with African nations or not? If nothing is in it for him, for America. And let's not forget his track record. He infamously called African nations shithole countries, cut development aid, and barely engaged the continent during his first term, except to block immigration and limit trade. So while Trump talks about peace in St. Peter's, his policies, they tell a different story. Because if your freedom, your democracy, or your sovereignty doesn't fit into his America First framework, guess what? It becomes negotiable. Just like military aid to Ukraine, just like refugee rights, just like Black history in U.S. museums. So let me ask you this. Can peace really come from someone who treats war like a business deal? And if that's how Trump handles Ukraine, what does that mean for the rest of us? What does that mean for the Congo minerals deal that he just accepted from President Tshisekedi? Let's keep going.
At the Pentagon right now, there's the signal chat with his wife on it where he's discussing that attack in Yemen. There's another signal chat discussing the attack on Yemen. There's a reporter accidentally involved. You said the other day that you had a talk with the secretary. Did you take him to the woodshed?
I had a talk with him, and whatever I said, I probably wouldn't be inclined to tell you. But we had a good talk. He's a talented guy. He's young, he's smart, highly educated, and I think he's going to be a very good hopefully a great defense secretary, but he'll be a very good defense secretary.
You have 100% confidence in
I don't have 100% confidence in anything. Okay, anything. Do I have 100%? It's a stupid question. Look,
it's a pretty important position.
No. You don't have 100%. Only a liar would say I have 100% confidence. I don't have 100% confidence that we're going to finish this interview.
We will.
Let's go.
Well, spoiler alert there. They did get through the interview after all. But let's talk about what just happened. The reporter asks Trump a simple but critical question. Do you have 100% confidence in your defense secretary, Pete Hegseth? Now, you would expect a president, especially one dealing with Pentagon turmoil and leaked signal chats, to offer a clear answer here. But Trump's response? That's a stupid question. Only a liar would say they have 100% confidence. Let's pause there. Because this isn't just about semantics, right? It's about accountability. We're talking about the man who oversees America's military, nuclear weapons, international defense posture, global security alliances. And Trump's response is basically, I had a chat with him, don't worry about it. And let's not forget the context here. Leaked private signal messages with his wife and a reporter. Ongoing turmoil at the Pentagon. Whispers of internal distrust and fractured command. This isn't just messy, it's dangerous. And Trump's casual dismissal says everything. He's young, smart, hopefully great. That's not confidence. That's deflection. And it raises a much bigger question here. What does leadership look like when there's zero accountability at the top? Because we've seen this before. A revolving door of unqualified appointees. A loyalty-first, expertise-later approach to critical institutions. And a president who refuses to take responsibility until things explode. This matters, not just for America's image abroad, but for every country in the world who depends on U.S. stability in defense partnerships, counterterrorism, and international peacekeeping. Because when chaos reigns in the Pentagon, best believe that the rest of the world feel it too. And if Trump can't give a straight answer about his own defense secretary, how can any nation trust U.S. commitments under his leadership? Now, here's the part that really shows you what kind of leadership we're dealing with.
Elon Musk and Doge, everyone knows that there's wasteful government spending. It's really important. But the cuts have had some serious consequences. There have been cuts to foreign aid programs that save lives and keep people alive overseas. There's been research at the National Institutes of Health on cancer, on Alzheimer's, that has had to be stopped. And the question I think people have is, did Doge go too far, too fast, too reckless?
No, I think Doge has been, saved $150 billion. We saved, that's a lot of money. There's also a lot of things right now under investigation, which is going to increase that amount by a lot. That's a tremendous amount of money. There were some things where, when I heard about them, I put them back, as you know. There are things that I'm considering right now putting back, but overall we've saved hundreds of billions of dollars.
Well, the original promise was $2 trillion, went to $1 trillion, now to $150 billion, and heading south.
You don't know what it's going to be because we have things that are at a very high level that are being looked at right now. We also found tremendous waste, fraud, and abuse, as you know. We found a lot of fraud. There was a lot of fraud. Fraudulent things were taking place, and we ended that, and those people are going to be suffering because of it.
A legal note, fraud is a crime. There have been no referrals to the Justice Department on any.
Well, you don't know that, do you? How do you know that?
Have there been referrals to the, are there criminal referrals?
How would you know that there were no referrals? I think there were referrals.
They generally, all right, there's been no investigation from the Justice Department. How do you know that? I'm asking you, sir.
No, you're not asking me. You made a statement. You're not
now I'm asking you.
That was a statement that you made. There have been.
I'm asking you.
Have there been? Yes, there have.
So there have been referrals for fraud from the work of
Doge. Of course there have been. Take a look at some of these things that took place. Billions of dollars were given to people for no reason whatsoever. Of course there have been.
I want to bring up what is truly one of, to a lot of people, one of the biggest achievements of your first term. That is Operation Warp Speed. You got that COVID vaccine up and going and distributed, and a lot of people took it, and a lot of people that feel their lives have been saved by it. Now we have this measles outbreak, biggest in a decade in Texas, and it's because people aren't getting their children vaccinated. Do you recommend to parents that they get their children vaccinated for measles?
Well, I recommend the governors to make the decisions. You have a very talented governor of Texas. and he's making decisions, and those decisions are going to be made rapidly. This is a very much different thing than COVID in terms of rapidity and speed and other things. Measles have been with us a long time, and I'm not saying good, bad, or indifferent. I'm just saying that the governors are making the decision. It's a federalist decision.
The president is our leader in so many ways, and your voice counts so much, and you can't tell moms and dads, it's a good thing to get a measles vaccine.
Do I recommend it?
Yes,
I do.
Okay.
I recommend it, yeah.
Got it. That was
Do I
my
mandate
question.
it? No.
No, I didn't
But
ask.
I do recommend it, yes.
Good. Do you think
And I have recommended it.
Do you think the Secretary of Health and Human Services, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who has a history of, at the very least, vaccine skepticism, do you think Kennedy recommends the measles vaccine?
He did. He recommended it. Yeah, he did.
You satisfied with his
he
response on this?
recommended that they go out and get the vaccine.
So Trump is bragging that his administration saved $150 billion through spending cuts. Sounds impressive, right? Until you hear what exactly got cut. Foreign aid programs that literally keep people alive. Life-saving medical research at NIH on cancer, Alzheimer's, and other critical illnesses. Vaccination campaigns in vulnerable communities. So what's the message here? That cutting programs that save lives is somehow a win, as long as it saves money? Let's be clear, wasteful government spending is real, but that's not what this is. This is about ideological cuts, the kind that disproportionately hurt poor families, developing countries, and yes, Black and brown communities, both at home and abroad. And then the conversation shifts to vaccines. Now, remember, Trump brags about Operation Warp Speed, says it was one of the greatest achievements of his presidency. But when asked if he would clearly recommend the measles vaccine amidst the worst outbreak in a decade, he punts. I recommend the governors make the decision. My people, measles is one of the most contagious and preventable diseases in the world. It's not a political football. It's a public health emergency. And yet Trump dances around it. Why? Because he's not leading. He's calculating. He doesn't want to upset his base, especially the anti-vax crowd. So even when children's lives are on the line, he says, yes, I recommend it, but I don't mandate it. This is the same man whose administration cut global health programs, defunded medical research, rolled back science budgets, and then politicized public health messaging at every turn. And the result is what we're seeing: more outbreaks, more confusion, and more people left vulnerable. Not because the science wasn't there, but because the leadership wasn't. And here comes the part that should make every one of us pause.
I want to talk a little bit about presidential power, the powers that you have in the presidency temporarily that the American people have given you, right? You've revoked a lot of people's security clearances. You've revoked people's security details who are still threatened, with death threats. You've gone after law firms because they've employed people you don't like, or they have represented people you don't like.
Well, they obviously agreed because they paid me a lot of money.
Well, the reason they agreed is because you were threatening to destroy their business with your executive order that said you can't represent clients for the federal government. That's their bread and butter.
Boys. These are the biggest, most powerful lawyers. These are not people
you got a lot of leverage
are easily intimidated.
As president, you've got all the cards.
And they paid hundreds of millions of dollars because they felt, I guess, they probably felt they did something wrong.
It was for survival, sir.
No, it isn't.
You're crushing their business.
These firms are very powerful firms, and there's 15 of them. And these are firms that probably, look, you have to ask them. In fact, this is a separate story. You have to ask them, why did you all pay Trump hundreds of millions of dollars in services, etc.? Why did you do that? I don't know.
You don't think that
we have a clause in the thing that while we admit no wrongdoing, but it's like one of those things. And now I'm friendly with those firms, but it's, these are the most powerful firms in the world. And they just signed whatever I put in front of them. I've never seen anything like it. I'm actually surprised myself in a certain way, but they obviously felt they probably did something wrong. I guess that's why they signed.
I guess the question out of that is the concern that people have. Are you using your powers as president to get personal revenge?
No, I'll tell you what. You're really not asking, and you should be asking. There has never been a president in this country, in the history, that was persecuted like I was persecuted by really crooked people, dishonest, horrible people, and it's been proven. So when you say I'm treating people rough, I'm not treating people rough. I was treated worse than any president in the history of our country. And, people figured, well, maybe that's it. Finally, we got, he's leaving town. There goes the helicopter. And then I came back. And I came back because I have tremendous support. When you win an election like I won it, and you will admit I won all 7 swing states, I won the popular vote, I won 2,750 districts compared to 500 districts. That's why the map is all red. And those people feel that I was treated unfairly.
But does that give you the right to go after your political opponents with the powers of this office?
I'm going after, all I'm doing, hey, Biden did something to me, and I did something to Biden. And you know why I did it? Because he's grossly incompetent. That's not a man that should be allowed to, be looking at things that are very confidential.
But what about,
because he didn't,
71
here's
people
a man that used an auto pen to sign very important documents. Now, who really is, do you think he knew that they were using an auto pen? I mean, he used an auto pen to sign very, very important documents. And so those are really the questions you should be asking. What do you think of the auto pen? Who wielded the auto pen? Because whoever that person was, think of it, whoever the person that wielded the auto pen, he was really the president of the United States. Because I don't think that Biden knew anything about it.
Fair enough. But you are the president now, and I'm asking the justification for going after people you don't like.
No. People that I think are dishonest. It's not that I don't even know most of them. They're people that I think are dishonest.
These people made you angry.
No, it's not anger. These are people that I think are very dishonest. I don't think they're worthy of being able to go into top secret information. I think that's fine. And Biden did that with many of our people. But when you look at it, these are people that I don't think are worthy. That's my decision. It's not a question of anger.
Okay. I understand you just had a phone call with the new Canadian premier, and they just had this election.
Yeah.
You were a big issue in it, and Canadians, many of them, are really angry, furious about your talk about we're going to take over Canada, it's going to become the 51st state. And it kind of is of a piece. A lot of travel is down into the United States from around the world. It feels like there's been reputational damage.
The country's doing great.
Well,
prices are down.
Not the tourism.
Gasoline's down. Energy's down. Tourism is going to be way up. Wait till you see the numbers. The tourism is way up.
Not now.
Now Canada, tourism's doing very well. We're doing very well. We're doing very well. Wait till you see the real numbers come out in 6 months from now. Wait till you see the numbers.
But do you think, I'm going to ask you, if I may, do you think the reputation of the United States has gone down under your presidency?
No, I think it's gone way up, and I think we're a respected country again. We were laughed at all over the world. We had a president that couldn't walk up a flight of stairs, couldn't walk down a flight of stairs, couldn't walk across a stage without falling. We had a president that was grossly incompetent. You knew it, I knew it, and everybody knew it, but you guys didn't want to write it because you're fake news.
All right. Thank you.
And by the way, ABC is one of the worst. I have to be honest with you.
Now, this is what you call a flat-out confession. Trump was asked a very basic question. Are you using the powers of the presidency to get revenge? And his answer? They paid me a lot of money. They thought they did something wrong. They signed whatever I put in front of them. Y'all, that's not leadership. That's coercion. That's power used not to protect democracy, but to punish enemies. This isn't just about revoking security clearances or cutting access. It's about a worldview that sees public office not as a responsibility, but as a weapon. And then came the deflection. I was persecuted like no other president. Really, truly, Mr. President. But that's the justification. That's the whole game. Play victim, then strike back and call it justice. But here's the danger here. Once you normalize revenge politics, you erode the very foundation of democracy. Because who decides who's worthy of security clearances, of due process, of being targeted by executive orders? Apparently, it's just a matter of who made Trump angry. And let's talk about how dangerous that is. Because this playbook, this idea that I alone can fix it while silencing dissent and punishing critics, is how authoritarianism begins. And it never ends with your political opponents. It always trickles down to the media, to the activists, to the organizers, to the marginalized, to us. And this is especially chilling for Black communities because we've lived this script before. FBI targeting civil rights leaders, surveillance of Black organizers, immigration raids without due process, and political enemies labeled as threats to national security. And just when you think it couldn't get more absurd, he pivots to Canada. Yes, Canada brags about calling the Canadian premier after joking that the US should take over the country, calls it a joke, then shrugs off global reputational damage like it's just a hiccup in the data. But let's be clear, global trust matters, especially for a superpower. And so does presidential restraint. Because once that line is crossed, there's no telling where it stops. So the question isn't just about Trump, it's about us. Are we okay with the president using the Oval Office like a personal courtroom, a payback booth, a score settling arena? Because the more we normalize this, the more dangerous the precedent we're setting for the next leader who walks in that door. And then he hits him with the big question at the end here.
Thank you for having us here. I have one more question. It's a big one. It's a question that you know a lot of people have out there. What do you say to people who are concerned you are seizing too much power and becoming an authoritarian president like we haven't had before?
No, I would hate them to think that. I'm doing one thing. I'm making America great again. We have a country that was failing. We have a country that was laughed at all over the world. We had a leader that was grossly incompetent. He should have never been there. The election was rigged. He should have never been there. Our country suffered greatly, and now our country's coming back like nobody can believe. I have editorials just today where they're saying they've never seen anything like it. They love it. Our country's coming back, and we're respected again.
Mr. President, thank you.
Thank you, Terry, very much.
The last question, the one everyone's thinking, but few are bold enough to ask. Are you becoming an authoritarian? And what does Trump say? No, I would hate them to think that. No, I'm just making America great again. Now, that's not a denial. That's not a defense grounded in democracy, checks and balances, or constitutional restraint. That's a rebrand. He's not taking power for himself. He's saving the country. He's not consolidating authority. He's fixing what was broken. He's not bypassing law. He's just doing what needs to be done. This is the classic strongman script. Wrap authoritarian power in nationalist language, scapegoat your enemies, and claim to be the only one who can fix it. And if you question it, you're anti-patriotic, you're ungrateful, you're part of the problem. Let me be clear, democracy dies this way, one excuse at a time. And what's most chilling is not just what Trump says. It's how many people are actually cheering him on. How many are ready to trade freedom for a false sense of control? How many are okay watching the tools of power weaponized because they think it won't affect them? But history tells us it always does. So we've got a choice to make. Do we keep falling for the performance, clapping while the institutions around us literally crumble? Or do we finally start asking the hard questions, not just about Trump, but about the system that keeps enabling this? Because here's the truth. Authoritarianism doesn't announce itself with tanks in the streets. It walks in smiling, waving a flag and saying, "Don't worry, I've got this." So where do we go from here, my people? Let's step back for a second. In just 100 days, President Trump has rewritten immigration policy with sweeping deportations that ignore due process, gutted funding for HBCUs, Black museums, and key public health programs, pushed tariffs that have caused a global economic crisis, threatened to use presidential power for personal vendettas, removed a photo of the first Black president from the Oval Office and replaced it with himself under fire after a failed assassination attempt. And somehow we're supposed to believe that this is about unity, about making America great again. Let's be honest. This isn't just about policy. It's about power and who gets to hold it, who gets erased, who gets targeted, and who gets protected. Because if this is what the first 100 days look like, what happens in the next 100? What happens in year 2, 3, 4? Is the worst yet to come? And how do we use our voice to stop it from getting there? That's the question we need to be asking, not just as voters, but as citizens. Because democracy isn't just what happens at the ballot box. It's what we're willing to fight for after the votes are counted. And if we've learned anything from this show, The Breakdown, it's that silence is not an option. It can't be an option. But here's the part they always forget. When we are pushed to the margins, we don't disappear. We organize. We built HBCUs when we were barred from classrooms. We sparked the Harlem Renaissance when they tried to erase our art. Remember? We launched independence movements in Ghana, Jamaica, Kenya, and beyond when colonial powers told us we'd never be ready. And now it's time again, my people. Because what Trump is doing right now isn't just about policy. It's a playbook for erasing progress globally. But we have our own blueprint, a global Black community that refuses to be erased. So now I want to hear from you. What's the one thing that stood out to you the most in Trump's first 100 days? And what are you most concerned about as we move forward? Drop it in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And if you enjoyed this episode, don't just watch, join us, hit subscribe, share it with someone, and become part of the Breakdown family here at Panagenius TV. Because this moment is about the future we're building or losing. That's it for today's show. Thanks for watching. Until next time, take care.